Arsenal are not playing in the FA Cup this weekend, which gives us a chance to go through some wider club news, including the search for our new sporting director, a possible new signing, and a very, very surprising stat that's come out this week. Let's get into it. Yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark. This is episode 11 of the Arsenal Roundup, our news show where we go through news that isn't necessarily on the pitch news. You know, what's going on around the club. We might look at press conferences, we look at transfer rumours, injury news, kind of forward look some of our fixtures, stuff like that. And we kind of talk more generally around the club. So if you like the sound of that, stick around today. I'm going to be talking about our hunt for our sporting director, a new signing that's been rumoured by Sky Germany, and a really interesting stat about Arsenal's involvement in the title race. I think Sky Sports covered originally first and has kind of blown up around the internet, which I think is a really interesting one. Before I get into it, I just want to say wherever you are, wherever you're listening, I hope you are doing well and I hope your family are well and you are kind of enjoying an Arsenal-free weekend. Whatever you're doing with that weekend, I hope it has been good to you. I'm going to start this morning then with the search for the new sporting director. So, we heard this week that David Ornstein has come out and said Arsenal are going to appoint their sporting director in the month of March. He didn't say if it's going to be the first week or the last week, but the month of March is the intended timeline. And, you know, better late than never, I guess. I think everyone would have wanted this wrapped up a little bit earlier, but I would imagine with the way the timings fell, with Edu announcing his departure and then getting ready for the January transfer window and doing that through Jason Ato, and then, you know, the not doing anything, I guess, in the January transfer window, but expressing interest in a lot of players, Sesko, Ollie Watkins, Sfera Nipan. You know, there was a lot bubbling under the surface, even though we didn't get anything done. So I think the club's focus has been on that, and it's been widely reported that Arsenal have used external consultants to get them to this point where they've got a shortlist, and now it's going to be with the club's senior hierarchy. I imagine people like Josh Kroenke, Tim Garlick, I doubt Stan, but maybe, you never know. But people like that are going to be involved at this point, starting to work through this process and appoint the successor. And I'm sure Mikel Arteta's either involved or he has a real strong pipeline into that kind of work, where he can express his opinion and go, yeah, I like that guy, I don't like that guy. And there'll be people assessing, does Mikel Arteta and X person work well? You know, and that's a really important thing to get right at this stage, I think, with the project and how everything's going. We're in a bit of a difficult period, I would say, where we really thought this was going to be the culmination year, and actually it's really not gone the way we wanted it to for a number of reasons. So whoever comes in now has a big job to kind of get energy back behind the club, and he or she has also got some mammoth contracts to be looking at. Now, I'm just going to quickly turn my notes over to get to those contracts. In 2026, we lose Leandro Trossard, Alexander Zinchenko, and Takahiro Tomiyasu. You hear those names and you think, okay, well, Tommy hasn't played for us for a long time. I wonder if there'll be a short extension there just to try and hold some of his value, because at this rate, he's not going to be back till kind of December. And then we're really not going to have much time for him in 2026 to kind of re-establish his value. So I wonder if there's a 1-2 year contract extension coming his way. Zinchenko, we had reports earlier this year that Zinchenko was going to leave. So whoever it is has got to manage that sale. And Leandro Trossard is one of those where feels like he's been a really key player, but he's 30 now. So there may be a summer sale. There has been interest previous. We don't know. But whoever it is will be overseeing that. 2027 is when their work will really come in, or hopefully well before 2027, I should say. Out of contract in 2027, Gabriel Jesus, Bukayo Saka, William Saliba, Gabriel Magalhaes, and Gabriel Martinelli. Boy, those are some big names. And names we can't afford to lose. I do wonder if there'll be a sale out of that group. Gabriel Jesus, again, I'm not sure how much value he will have retained with his injury problems, so be interesting to see how we do there. Saka, I just, I can't see that going anywhere but him signing a new deal. But the remaining three of Saliba, Gabriel and Martinelli. Saliba's been linked heavily with Real Madrid. Gabriel has been linked with a move to Saudi. And Gabriel Martinelli has been linked somewhere, basically, since he moved. Jurgen Klopp was a big fan of him and wanted to get him at Liverpool. We didn't allow that, but I can certainly see a sale for Gabriel Martinelli kind of going through and funding the big kind of regeneration and next phase of this club, or one of those centre-backs, which, we don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that, but Arsenal will need to fund signings from somewhere, and there won't be an endless check from the Cronkies. We know that. So it will be really interesting to see how they do this, and how the new sporting director comes in and works through that process. The Athletic did an amazing article on the new sporting director. So what I've done instead is I've taken those names and I've kind of looked for what is their history, what are their best signings, some individuals that they've signed at their previous clubs that might make us go, oh wow. And there are actually a number of really common themes through this, which I find quite interesting. I'm not going to speak about Jason Ato today. Now, I know a lot of fans have taken the January transfer window and kind of used that as a kind of nail in the coffin for Jason Ato potentially being the sporting director of this club. I think that's really harsh because I don't think the market was set up in a way that Jason Ato would ever have been able to do this work and get it done. And also, I don't think people saw the Edu departure coming. So Jason Ato, work on these transfers goes in 12 to 18 months in advance. Jason Ato was scrambling. So I think it would be very, very harsh to judge him on that. But equally, I can't judge him now because he hasn't really made any signings. He hasn't done anything apart from support Edu, which obviously I think he's done a very good job at. Edu clearly had the right people around him and helped us build this club going in the right direction. So that's a tick, but there's nothing more to go on for that. So I'm going to go on the people that are in the Athletics list and talk about their previous signings and stuff like that, and kind of discuss who I think was really good and what might excite Arsenal fans moving forward. So it's worth noting at this point that the Athletics article has noted that Luis Campos from PSG is not in the running anymore for this job. His name came out big time at the first point where Edu was saying, oh, I'm leaving. Luis Campos was a big front runner at that point, but he seemingly dropped out of contention for this role. Whether he's done that or Arsenal have taken him off the list, I don't know, and I don't think anyone really knows. So it'd be interesting to see whether there's a statement afterwards from him or PSG or something like that about whether Arsenal did approach Luis Campos. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through in order of, I think, least to most likely to sign. And the first two are Thiago Scuro and Andrea Berti, from least to most. So these guys are the least likely to sign, and I think simply because there'd be a cost involved. So Thiago Scuro and Andrea Berta currently have clubs. Thiago Scuro at Monaco, Andrea Berta at Atleti. Thiago Scuro has not really signed any massive names at Monaco. I think it's difficult to judge the sporting director of a French club who isn't PSG because there is no money in that league at the moment. And this is something I worry about with Scuro, is he became sporting director in 2023. He's not used to working with big budgets. That's not something he's done because as rich as the kind of principality of Monaco is and as rich as that team was, those clubs are having to be so tight financially. So really, Monaco have only signed kind of young players, and there is a number of names on the list that I didn't really recognise or know about. So I thought, okay, this is an interesting one. He's linked with Arsenal for a big job, and I don't think he necessarily seems to have the CV. Interestingly, the one player that I did recognise is Flo. Let's call him Flo. Flo Balogun. He obviously came from Arsenal to Monaco, and it was a big thing at the time. Do we keep Eddie, who, for all intents and purposes, had a better Arsenal career than Balogun at the time, or do we work to get Balogun into the first team behind Gabby Jesus at the time, it would have been, and see how he does? Now, he played a few first-team games for Arsenal and did okay, scored some goals, but I don't think he ever really kind of took the hearts or the minds of Arsenal fans in any way, shape or form. We got a really good deal for him. I think it was around £30 million, £35 million, something like that, a little more in euros. And Monaco, I guess, haven't really seen him kick on and fire. He's having a kind of injury kind of problem which keeps going on and keeping him out a little bit and not allowing him to get a run of games. Interestingly, they also have another signing, Mika Bierith, at Monaco at the moment, who is another ex-Arsenal Academy striker who has scored 3 hat-tricks in 7 Ligue 1 games. Incredible. A lot of people are pointing at that going, well, why didn't Arsenal keep this guy? And I think it's too simplistic to go, well, that guy's just hit a hot streak and he was once at Arsenal, so, they should have just kept him. I think that's a bit reductionist, basically. But what I'm saying about Thiago Scuro is he's going to cost money, okay, because we're going to have to buy him out of his contract, and we really don't know too much about him. Sure, he might have been fantastic through the consultancy process and the recruitment process, but for me, as an outsider looking in, who doesn't have links inside the club, that one for me doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the right fit for the timing of the project. Now, if someone said to me, you'll get Scuro at the time that we got Edu, then maybe it's a different story. You're looking at it and you're going, okay, cool, we'll try someone new, we'll try an up-and-comer and see what we get. I think we've done that bit, and I think we need a more established name, and a more established name would be Andrea Berta, who is used to dealing with huge sums of money at Atletico Madrid. Andrea Berta has definitely got names you'll recognise on his CV. The top 3, Jan Oblak, Antoine Griezmann, and Rodri. Rodri is an interesting one because I thought Atleti sold him, but actually it's interesting, they had him in their academy. He went to Villarreal and then they brought him back. So I missed that bit of his career, the Villarreal bit of his career. So those 3 are players that any team in the world would want. And this guy has been part of the team that identified them. Now, I think he took the full kind of sporting director role in 2017 after all of those guys were signed. Sorry, after Rodri and Oblak, but Griezmann obviously came back. But that's not to say he wasn't involved. He was the technical director previous of the men's team. So he has been really, really involved in all of those transfers. And obviously, since 2013, when Andrea Berta signed, Atletico Madrid have been hugely successful. Champions League finals, La Liga titles, and fighting against, the established 2 in Spain. That should not be overlooked. Should not be overlooked at all, because, let's face it, that is what Arsenal are doing. No one apart from Manchester City or Liverpool have won the league since Chelsea in 2017. It's 2025, so we are fighting against this established top 2. And even though I think everyone had mentally discounted Liverpool this year and thought it was going to be Arsenal and Man City again, they were top last season until March, and we pulled them in with a big victory over them at the Emirates. And there was lots going on. They are still they were and are an incredibly good team. So we are fighting these 2 big clubs with incredible players, and that's exactly what Andrea Berta has done for years and years and years now at Atleti. Is there some value in that? I think there might be, He's done a job where he's had to identify kind of alternative superstars, and I would include someone like Antoine Griezmann in that. Obviously, he did go to Barca eventually. Jan Oblak is another one where you kind of get in early. You get in early, get them, and make sure that they don't end up at a club like a Barcelona or a Real Madrid. I think Barcelona and Real Madrid, they obviously sign their very young players like Endrick and Messi when Barcelona signed Messi, but they also do wait for people to be established. They don't really take those kind of middling punts where you see a player who looks really, really good, but it's not certain. They either take a very, very early punt on a very young player, Martin Odegaard also springs to mind, or they wait for someone to be established. Real Madrid do this all the time. Gareth Bale, Trent, if they get Trent in the summer, Courtois, they do it with a lot of players, and they wait for them to be established and then they go for them. Atleti have to do things differently. They have to sign those players that aren't either of those ends of the spectrum. They're in the middle, and you're going, okay, we need to get that guy in because it looks like promise. And he's clearly been part of a team that have been able to do that, so he'll be able to bring those lessons into Arsenal. Again, though, Andrea Berta will cost money, and I wonder if Arsenal are looking in the kind of the sporting director free agent market, if you want to call it that, just to avoid some costs and keep those costs for signing players. It's going to be a couple of £1 million, most of these guys, I think. So, that's a wage packet for a very decent player for a year. They've got to be thinking about that. They've got to be thinking about PSR and UEFA financial rules and stuff like that. So I think that really leads on to our next candidates. Number two, of least to most, is Dan Ashworth. We all know the name Dan Ashworth. He has just had a very rough 12 months at Manchester United and has been removed by the new leadership there, Ineos, to, I guess, create space and funds. It was a very weird one. I think he did 4 to 5 months at Manchester United, having then basically spent a year trying to sign him from Newcastle. I think it's bizarre to give him basically like 4 to 5 months. They saw some mistakes, some things that they didn't like, and they shifted him on for 4 to 5 million quid. An incredible story, that one. But for me, Dan Ashworth has some really interesting history in his signing history. So he has obviously been at Manchester United and Newcastle before that, but before that he was at Brighton. And we know how well Brighton are run. We know how good they are at identifying talent. Slightly different to that Atleti model where actually I think they go and find the real curveballs, the kind of players that no one really sees coming. Then they're talked about, in very deep football circles, but not picked up by mainstream media. And I'm talking players like Moises Caicedo and Karu Mitoma, and also, to an extent, Leandro Trossard. He is now with us, but he was signed by Ashworth at Brighton. Clearly he can pick out talent, because we know how good Trossard can be on his day. Mitoma, they've just rejected 90 million for Mitoma. Incredible stuff, and obviously sold Caicedo for over 100 million in the year that we brought Declan Rice as well. So a very, very impressive resume. And at his time at Newcastle, Dan Ashworth also brought in Alexander Isak and Anthony Gordon, who recently tore us apart, those two players. So, in terms of signing attacking talent, this guy knows what he's doing, I think. Mitoma, Trossard, Isak, Gordon, just in that kind of very high-level research that I've done. Really, really interesting that Dan Ashworth could be the guy. For me, the reason I haven't put Dan Ashworth at the top of this list is, it's going to sound like a very silly bit of analysis, but I just don't think fans would give Dan Ashworth time because he's been at Manchester United. So he's been at Manchester United and we've seen how quickly that went wrong. He's been at Newcastle as well, which is not a club that we like particularly. And I think if we had a bad transfer window, Edu has a bad transfer window with us if he was staying with us, I think there's a lot of patience for him. A lot of patience. And you could almost say that about the summer one. That I think if Edu wasn't leaving, people would be viewing the summer transfer window very differently and saying, okay, look, you've had a window off. You didn't quite get it right. Even though I think we still did some good business, the general fan sentiment is that the summer wasn't well balanced. So I think that's an interesting thing to think about, is would Dan Ashworth kind of be a popular figure among the fans? Because actually this role is growing and growing, and people are talking about sporting directors and technical directors more and more in the, not just the mainstream media, but in fan culture, fan media, as I'm doing right now. So we really need to think about that. And that leads me to the most likely candidate, I think, out of the Athletics list, which is Roberto Alabe. He is leaving Sociedad at the end of the season, which means he will be basically, like I said before, a sporting director free agent. My issue with that is, can he work for Arsenal in the meantime? Can he engage on our behalf, negotiate on our behalf, during this time period? Sort of, it's 2nd of March now, as I record this, till 1st of June, when the transfer window will open. How will he do? What will he be doing? Will he be able to work some deals through? Very interestingly, obviously, we are very highly linked with Martin Zubamendi from Sociedad. Alabe is leaving Sociedad. It might be that we get Zubamendi, so that could be really interesting. But even more interesting, Roberto Alabe, whilst he was at Sociedad, got Martin Odegaard on loan and Alexander Isak signed permanently for Sociedad, and then sold him for a club record fee to Newcastle. Massive signings, and the Isak theme comes up again because Dan Ashworth was obviously the technical director who signed Isak at Newcastle from Roberto Alabe at Sociedad. So Isak is really linked into everything Arsenal are doing right now, and obviously I don't think that means we're going to sign him. But I think it probably suggests that Arsenal have got an idea that they want someone who can identify attacking talent or sets up a scouting team to identify attacking talent really, really well. So that's how I kind of see those being played out. I don't think that Thiago Scura is really a likely candidate, but the others I can totally see. It's just whether we want to pay money for Andrea Berta or whether we want to take Dan Ashworth or Alabe on kind of a free transfer. That's the kind of history of those guys. I'm going to take a short break, and when I come back, I'm going to be talking about the news that broke this week that Arsenal might be signing Joshua Kimmich. Hello everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you're like me, you finished watching an Arsenal game and you're already looking for the next bit of Arsenal coverage you can find. If that sounds like you, follow or subscribe to Arsenal Unfiltered on your podcast app of choice right now to make sure you don't miss a single episode from me. I'm here 3 times a week, reviewing matches and covering Arsenal news, and I'm so excited to have you all here as well. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the Arsenal Roundup, episode 11. We've just spoken about sporting directors, but now we're going to move to a transfer story that broke this week around Joshua Kimmich. I think this is a really interesting one. It's come out of Sky Germany. I believe Flo Plettengold is the first fella who reported this, and it's a strange one for me. So let's kind of break it down. Obviously, Thomas Partey and Jorginho this summer are out of contract. We need to sign at least one, maybe 2 midfielders. I wonder how Declan Rice's role will evolve with this and how it will change, whether he will end up playing at 6 a little bit more. Might be interesting. I'm going to assume for this conversation that Zubimendi will join us. Okay? I know that's a big jump, and there's still interest from other clubs, but we obviously had that report in January that, look, it seems like he's really, really close, and we haven't really heard anything of the contrary since. So let's say, for example, Zubimendi has joined us. We still lose Jorginho and Thomas Partey if nothing changes on their contract situation. So our number 6 options would be Martin Zubimendi and Declan Rice. Declan Rice has obviously been playing left 8, so that would mean for some games repurposing him in at 6. That would mean we need another left 8 option. Now, could we go into the market for that, or is Ethan Nwaneri already that guy? Even Martin Odegaard moving over there. We'd have Mikel Merino. It just feels a little bit light to me. Fabio Vieira will come back, so you'd have Fabio Vieira, Martin Odegaard, Ethan at a pinch, a kind of 0.5 option, I think. Merino, Rice, Zubimendi. So 5.5 midfielders for 6 slots. It's not really enough. So I think there is a world where we sign 2 midfielders. We have to sign one, and like I say, I'm going to assume for this that Zubimendi is one of them, to come in and play 6 regularly for Arsenal. Joshua Kimmich is a really interesting profile, because I think this is a player that Arsenal and, Manchester City have wanted him for a very, very long time, since Pep came to Manchester City. He is a brilliant player. Let's put that out there right now. He is a stunning player, and to get him on a free transfer, even though the wage packet would be huge, let's point that out. It might blow our wage structure, which there's a whole discussion about whether that's something we want to do this summer or not. But yeah, Joshua Kimmich is a player who would come in and definitely upgrade that Arsenal midfield. I have a number of questions though. I guess quickly, he would kind of do the Jorginho role in the squad. I think he's 30. He is a really seasoned professional and an exceptional passer. I think he'd probably come in and do the role of Jorginho, where he's coming in and doing the odd game here or there, dropping a 7, 8 out of 10, and then coming back to the bench and being a coach, a senior figure, all of that sort of stuff. My question, however, relates around that. Is Joshua Kimmich in the time of his career where he really wants to do that? And if he's coming in to be a starter at Arsenal, well, what happens to the Zubimendi transfer? I think it's a really strange link, and this is why I'm not putting too much stock in it. Again, there's another link in that he can play right back, and obviously Thomas Partey has been doing that a lot for us this year. So are we replacing that function of having a central midfielder who can also play in one of the fullback zones? There's lots that kind of link it and make it a sensible story, but there's also lots that make it just feel completely bizarre. I think the Zubimendi link was so strong to then be linked with another 6 who I don't personally think would be happy coming in and playing the Jorginho role. Let's remember, he might be 30 years old. He's still playing really regularly for Bayern Munich, and they're probably going to go very deep in the Champions League this year. So it's not like he's looking around and going, oh, this is terrible, isn't it? I want to change. He might want to move to a different country or try a different footballing experience. I absolutely get that, and that might be part of it. But at 30, I don't think he's done. I don't think he's done playing first team football, and I think he could go to a Manchester City or a Liverpool or maybe even somewhere in Spain. Wouldn't he be a fantastic fit at Real Madrid and have a different footballing experience there and probably play a lot of minutes? If we're doing Zubimendi, I just can't see us doing Kimmich as well. I would imagine if we do sign 2 midfielders, it will be Zubimendi plus a cheaper option, which is more of a roll of the dice, not this guy, but Sambi Lokonga-esque, where we're kind of going, okay, you look really good. You're not going to cost us too much money. We're going to roll the dice on you because we're bringing in Zubimendi for 50 million, who we feel far more confident about, kind of embedding into the first team. I'm just going to read a quote from the report from Sky Sports. It's only about discussions, and the quote is, Arsenal are open to another midfielder, but are also focused on the options they already have at the club. Which makes me just think that, is this just Arsenal have had a discussion with them at some point, maybe during the time that they've been kind of wrapping up the Zubimendi deal, or is back up to the Zubimendi deal if that falls through, and this is now being reported and kind of headlined, as it were, as Arsenal are going big for Joshua Kimmich. I don't think when you read the report that that's what they're saying, and I also think it's very interesting how, one, it doesn't match up quite perfectly stylistically in terms of how we've done our transfer strategy, but then also it's not been picked up by somewhere like The Athletic, and I know I've spoken about The Athletic a lot today already, but The Athletic tend to have a slightly higher bar for reporting these rumours and reporting these transfer possibilities than somewhere like Sky or the mainstream tabloid newspapers. They're not reporting it. It's not there anywhere. So I think this is another one. It's similar to that Isak story we covered a few weeks ago where that came out of Spain. This one's come out of Germany, and I just don't think it's legit. I don't think it aligns with what Arsenal are doing. There is a very real world, I think, where Arsenal have had a conversation about Joshua Kimmich and have gone in and kind of tried to back up the Zubimendi deal. And I promise you, if the Zubimendi deal falls through, I think this is a very, very real transfer. But as of right now, I just think we've had a conversation about a potential free agent, and we've said, would you be interested? And it's gone no further than that. So I think we're going to kind of, maybe just for now, until the Zubimendi deal collapses or doesn't collapse, we'll hold fire on getting excited about that. I'm just going to talk very, very quickly, because I've probably got 2 minutes left in this podcast, and I heard a stat this week that I thought was so interesting. Arsenal have not led the league at any point this season. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. For how long we led last season and what we've kind of felt about this year, we've never been first at any point. Manchester United have spent one day on top of the table in the Premier League this season. Arsenal have spent 0. Look at their 2 seasons. It's so different. I saw, people going online when this stat came out. I think Sky Sports did it first. Were we ever really in the title race? We've not even been first once. Like, this is bizarre. Manchester City have been first, and they've had a bad year. Manchester United have been first. They've had a terrible year. Were we ever really in it? And I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think you can be in it without being on top. You're part of the chasing pack. That's what we've been all year. We've been the chasers. But I think it's really interesting to see our kind of expectation levels. We've maybe become so used to being top and being hunted down by the chasing pack of Manchester City that almost we felt really comfortable being on the other side of it and felt like, oh, well, we're just going to chase them down in the same way that Manchester City did. And we clearly haven't done that. And there's a multitude of reasons for that. But I just think it's so interesting that our expectations are we should have won the league this year. This is a disaster. And we never, ever were in a position to do it. Not once. Really interesting. I'm going to leave it there. That's episode 11 of the Arsenal Roundup, my weekly news show. I'm also going to be previewing and then reviewing the PSV game, which is on Tuesday. So you'll hear from me tomorrow as well. And then on Wednesday as a review. And I'll do a preview of the Manchester United game. Worth noting that we have 4 games in 2 weeks in the kind of run up to the next international break. PSV away, Manchester United away, and then we have PSV at home and Chelsea at home. A very difficult run. A very difficult run. My only solace is that Manchester United play today, whilst we're putting our feet up, and they also play on Thursday, 2 days after we play against PSV. So physically, we should be in far better shape than Manchester United come Sunday the 9th of March. Whether we can score, that's a different question. But I hope we can. I would take any result as long as it's a draw. A boring 0-0 away at PSV so we can bring them back to the Emirates and win there. I'd be fine with that. We have to get through that. And I think we have to beat Manchester United. We have to, by hook or by crook, with the way it's set up. The Chelsea game I can have a bit more peace with because I just think it's very difficult to take on a good team when you have no players. And I do think Chelsea are still a good team. Obviously, they'll be sliding, and Cole Palmer's gone a bit cold, as it were. But I do think that is a game I can make more of a peace with. I really think PSV, Manchester United, and PSV, again, we have to get through the Champions League round, and we have to beat Manchester United. So, busy couple of games coming up. I'm going to be previewing and reviewing both of those games, both of those ties. So, kind of look out for those on your podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts from. All that's left to say is thank you for following, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you very, very soon.